Good morning, everybody. This is the this is the live stream called Devil's Advocate. I am Perry Gruber. Wow, there's all kinds of weird things happening. There we go. I'm Perry Gruber, the founder of Copiosis, and Devil's Advocate is a show where we talk about the sticky questions related to the Copiosis implementation plan and other questions that people might have about the innovation. With me today, as always, is Jill Dell, our Devil's Advocate and member at large of the Copiosis implementation team. Funny, we were just talking about some implementation actions that we are going to be doing going forward to keep up with all the tremendous amount of
Yeah,
progress we're making and the response that we're getting, which is all so good and kind of stripping our team of our ability to keep up with all the work that we have to do. But before we jump into it, let me say if you're new to Copiosis and you're wanting to find out more, this really isn't the place to be. Here we talk about advanced questions. If you're wanting to find out more about Copiosis, though, we have a lot of information down on our website at copiosis.com. And then we also have a place where if you are more aware of Copiosis and you want to participate and support maybe financially what we're doing, you can go to this website, Patreon, and find out where all the money goes and even become a patron for as little as $1. And then also, if you are new to our YouTube channel, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and click the bell also, because then you'll be notified of um, future shows that we schedule from time to time or that we do in the moment. And speaking of that, the Devil's Advocate show is moving to a new time. We're going to be participating or having this show now on Mondays at 1 o'clock Pacific time instead of the Tuesday at 11 Pacific time. So again, we're going to be moving the show to Monday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. And if you subscribe to the channel, you will get notification of the upcoming shows that we have pre-scheduled. All right. Jill, you wanted to say something before we got fully into the action? What's up?
I did, and that's your introduction and stuff is kind of like I just wanted to share with people the sort of my thought process about why I find Copious so exciting, and it's exciting to me because of the results I think that it will bring to people and to the world. And I found this little thing on Facebook, and it is, I would say, a statement, and it was written by Kitty O'Meara. And I call it, for me, it's kind of like my prayer for humanity. And so this is how I see copiosis when it's beginning and as it evolves. So it says, and the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently. And the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed. So I thought it was just like perfectly describes
It
copiosis
is a
the way
perfect
that I
description.
see it,
It
right?
totally is. Where does that come
Yeah.
from, that quote?
It was written by Kitty O'Meara, and a friend posted it on Facebook, and I, saved it and printed it out for myself because I just think it's incredibly beautifully written, and that's the world I want.
Me
You
too.
know,
Yeah.
that's the world I want. So
it's interesting because some people hearing that think that's some sort of progressive or leftist pipe dream or utopia, but it can actually be our reality for everyone. It's just that we have been so conditioned to the life that we have with all of its struggle and strife that we get to the point where we believe nothing else is possible other than what we have, and
right,
so we just have to accept where we're at, and that is not the case at all. We get to
that's
create
not
whatever
the
we
case at all.
want. Yeah.
No. And what, okay, so for me, people talk about, oh, it's just a utopia. Well, nobody wants utopia. Utopia is not, it's boring, frankly. I
It's
mean,
dead. Yeah.
you have to have, anyway, I don't think that Copiosis is striving for any kind of utopia. That isn't the goal. The goal is just to free people,
Yes. Yes.
pursue what they're meant to be pursuing,
Yes. And you
and
can't.
and not forced to be pursuing.
Yes. And you can't know what you're meant to or want to pursue unless you have a wide amount of diversity in the world, some of which you don't agree with.
Exactly.
So you can't have
Exactly.
utopia if you have an expanding, ever increasing and expanding and prosperous society, because people have to be able to know what they want and don't want. And so yeah,
Yes.
we're not creating some dead society where everything is perfect and people are just humming and singing
Yeah.
kumbaya.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, not at
Boring,
all.
boring, boring.
Yes,
Yeah, we're creating a world where people think for themselves, right?
that's right.
And how they think for themselves is okay,
That's exactly
Like,
right.
I might not agree with it, but that's okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Uh, so, okay, so one of the conversations we had in one of the previous, we talked about, like paying off all these debts and kind of, there's a lot of debt to be paid off and all of that. And so, well, where does this NBR like magically appear? And how can it be endless and unlimited and all of those things? So I I guess I want to begin by, talking about capitalism and how money is created in capitalism. Well, it's okay. So I had a conversation with someone and they said, well, when the banks loan money, they have to have, okay, so let's say a bank has $1 million on deposit and they have to have a certain amount of that in reserves. Okay. So let's say 10%. So now they have $900,000 that they can loan out. Most people think that they can only loan out that $900,000
Right.
when in fact, and then they can't loan out any more than that. When in fact, what we have is that when the bank loans you that $900,000, they only have to use a fraction of their deposits. It's called fractional
Mm-hmm.
banking.
Mm-hmm.
So they take, say, 10% of that and put it into an account at the Federal Reserve
Mm-hmm.
to protect investors or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of that, let's see, be $810,000 is new money that came from nowhere,
Right.
came out of thin air.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, it comes from debt. It doesn't come out
Right.
of
It
thin air.
comes from it comes from debt,
Yeah.
but for them, it's actually out of thin air.
Yeah.
It does come out of thin air, and it is endless as long as they are able to make loans and put people in debt.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the
and
key.
then what they do is they sell that on a secondary market. So now they're just have all that money in their pocket,
Right.
and so that continues, right? And then when you look at commercial loans and all that, the other way that money is created is when a company offers stock on the stock market, because you know, it's determined based on their, you know, their worthiness and their assets and their, you know, their balance sheet, basically how much that stock is worth. But it can, you know, as it goes up over time, then they're generating all this capital income for themselves. So these are all just money out of thin air, basically, really, is what it is. So in copiosis, we don't have debt. So how are we don't have a stock market. So how is it different?
Well,
Where's the thin air going to come from?
yeah, it's hugely different because first of all, and most important, it's not created out of debt. So no one has to be in debt in order for there to be MBR. But let's look at it this way. Well, where MBR comes from is it comes out of nowhere, literally from nowhere. It's just
Right.
it's made up,
Yeah.
and it's made up from unlike currency. It's not made up from so. I heard recently that the reason why the banks can create money out of debt is because of the ever increasing value of assets in the future. As we go forward in the future, assets increase in
Mm.
value, and what they're actually doing is they're capitalizing in the now that future value. And the reason why we know that works is because you pay on the debt
Yeah.
as you move into the future.
Right.
So you're using future
Yes.
wealth to pay down the debt that created the money.
Right.
In copiosis,
Uh-huh.
that doesn't exist. We just it's just a number. It's not even a tangible thing. An MBR, one MBR is just a number in someone's account. It's not tied to anything. It's not um, it's just a number. It literally is made up, and so
Yes.
it doesn't because it's made up. We can just make up as much as we want. And the other interesting thing about it is, so when a bank issues money, the money is owned by the bank. It's the bank's money. So everybody's money is someone else's money. It's always
Yeah.
coming from someone else. MBR comes out of nowhere, and when it lands in your account, that one MBR in your account is 100% unique from any other MBR that exists. It's created just for you, and it can't be transferred. So the only value it has is value to you. It doesn't have value to anybody else. So
Right.
we can create as much MBR as we need to make the rewards. And because they're unique to the receiver, there's no competition for MBR. So like if Joe Blow the plumber is doing plumbing work and Jane Austen is doing plumbing work too, they're not competing for a limited pot of MBR. Their Jane's MBR pot is totally unique from
Right.
Joe's pot
Right.
of MBR. And
Right.
who's creating the pot? The pot is the size of the pot is determined by the actor. So like Joe the
Right.
plumber, the size of his pot is dependent. It's so fascinating when you think about it. Joe's pot of MBR that he's receiving MBR from is dependent on what Joe creates in terms of net benefit value. So the more value
Right.
he creates, the bigger his pot becomes.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So
I
it's
mean,
so it's
he might discover a completely different way of plumbing a house that is more efficient or whatever, and so that's more valuable than somebody that's just, you know,
fixing
doing like
pipes.
repair work
Yeah.
or something
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so this is the big difference between money. There's a couple of big differences we just talked about between how money is created and how MBR is created. One, it's not created from debt. Two, it's unique to the receiver. Three, it is not someone else's one MBR when it's created, it's not created as someone else's MBR given to another person. It's created sovereign, I guess you see what I'm saying? Like when a bank
It is
creates a
in of
dollar,
itself. It
yeah,
is
and
in of
there
itself.
that's how yes, in and of
Mm.
itself, it is unique,
In
and
and of
so
itself.
it's
Yeah.
totally different. And there's
Right.
another thing about money, the way we're talking about economics. This is good. There's another thing about money that people feel, but they don't, but it doesn't consciously register, and it's associated with the debt of or the obligation to kings. So like when back in the day when kings
Right.
the reason why subjects of kings had to pay taxes is because the taxes supported not just the kings, but the lords and the not the bishops, but the
Sure.
all
Yeah,
those
right.
high level people,
Yep.
and it also was used to fund standing armies, and so there was an obligation on the part of the
The people.
the people, the ruled, to support the ruler with taxes. The same thing kind of happens with money, because of course money is a legal tender. A legal tender is a currency that is established by a sovereign nation as the sovereign nation's currency.
Exactly.
Right. So
Uh-huh.
it happens. It's the same thing. So here we have in the United States we have the dollar. The dollar is the sovereign legal tender of the United States, and when you receive a dollar, you are obligated to pay taxes. So you're obligated to pay back to the ruler, the government, which presumably is you because we're all the government, but it doesn't really work that way. Um,
Right.
yeah, so we're obligated to pay the ruler the tax on the money that they've given us. So there's this kind of felt but not acknowledged pressure or obligation, and it becomes more conscious around tax time, where you are obligated to give back the money that you got, a portion of it, so that the government can do
Sure.
its things.
Yeah.
But
Right.
NBR doesn't have that at all, because when NBR is created, who created it? Well, it was created as a result of an individual. So when I get NBR, who created that NBR? I created the NBR because I created the MBV, the net benefit value.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
it's it
Exactly.
so the sovereign in copiosis is each individual human being, because each individual human being is creating the value that they're getting rewarded for. It's totally
Yeah.
different psychology when you think about it. It literally, we were talking about before the show, it literally, copiosis literally frees people, and it frees people to realize that they are unique sovereigns in and among themselves, and they're rewarding themselves in a sense for the value they create. That's what MBR
Yeah.
is. It's so
Exactly.
fascinating.
So, now the um, you know, economic uh, policy is basically created and run by the banks, and they're what they do is they manipulate interest rates, they manipulate um, credit requirements, they manipulate all these different factors for to control the credit flow or shut off the credit flow. Um, so, um, and what they're trying to do is control unemployment and control inflation and, yada, 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 yada. So, in copiosis, there's nobody controlling that.
Well, this is really interesting. I'm so glad we're talking about these subjects. These are some great questions and statements. So, yes, the big deal about the economy is managing the federal debt, managing the money supply, and managing jobs. And
Hmm.
and none of those things are actually working very well, because people are always having to do something to get them to work well. In
Yeah,
copiosis, everybody is employed who wants to be employed, because you're not working a job, you're doing what you like to do. So everyone is employed.
yeah,
It's 100% employment. Even the people who decide they don't want to do anything, they're employed because they're doing
yeah,
things
boy,
that they like to do.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
100% employment.
yeah,
There's no need
yeah,
to there's no need to manage the money supply, because NBR just shows up when people create net benefit reward or net benefit value,
right,
and the economy just runs along, because the economy is not running on this false idea of GDP. It's not false, but it's a
yes,
bad representation of the value that's created in an economy. Um,
exactly.
yeah, and so it's like when you think about it, it copiosis really runs itself as people do what they want to do, and the doing of those things naturally creates value.
Yeah,
So there's no need for an organization to manage unemployment, because there is no unemployment. There's no
there's no
need.
one.
Yeah, there's no unemployment.
Yeah,
There's no need for people
and
to
there's no debt, so there's no. Who cares what interest rates are? You're not
exactly.
investing it in a corporation, so who cares what profits are? you're not, all that goes away. And
Yeah,
taxes, you're not paying any
that's
taxes
exactly right.
because you don't need to, because everybody that's doing anything to contribute to what maybe we used to pay taxes for is now just getting NBR and doesn't need your dollars to do their job. They're
That's
already
exactly right.
receiving benefit and giving benefit by doing what they want to be doing,
That's
you know.
exactly right. Let's take a break. We're at 20 minutes after. So this is the Copiosis live stream called Devil's Advocate. You're watching with me and Jill Dell. I'm Perry Gruber, the founder of Copiosis, and we are taking a break to let you know that if you want to find out more about Copiosis, you can go to these websites and find out more. Copiosis.com is our headquarters on the internet. There we have all kinds of information about how our innovation works. And then the second URL is our Patreon account. If you're interested in funding us as little as $1 or $2 a month, you can do so at patreon.com. And we also have a listing of the budget. So what we do with all the money is on that website also. And then if you're interested to be up to speed on all the things that are happening on our YouTube channel, feel free to subscribe and click that bell. That way, when we schedule shows in advance, you will get advance notice through YouTube notifications that we have that kind of thing scheduled and ready to go, and you can make sure you do not miss it. So back to what you're saying, you're absolutely right, and it's interesting because you investment still occurs in Copiosis because people are going to be wanting to support what works, and people who have the resources are going to want those resources consumed because resources just sitting around don't create net benefit value.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
going to
There's
be
still
giving.
capital. There's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
investment. It's just done differently.
yes,
It's
and
just, it's not, you know, anyway, yeah, it's just different.
yeah, and so
It's
and
handled
so
differently.
so is there going to be a stock exchange? It's interesting to think about. So like right now, the stock exchange is trading the value of different stocks, and the value of the stocks are based on the market demand for the stock relative to what the company is doing. The value
Exactly.
of the
Exactly.
company is based
Right.
on what the company is doing for the market.
Exactly.
In
Sure. Yeah.
in Copiosis, there are no stocks because there's no money. So there's
No
no.
corporations.
Yeah. So you need a stock. A stock is a certificate that recognizes that the holder of the certificate gave money to the company, and the company is
Yeah.
using the money to do things with. And
Right.
the stock
Yeah.
represents kind of like an IOU. So if the owner of the piece of stock certificate wants their money back, they can go and cash it in and get the value current of that stock certificate. In Copiosis,
Yeah.
there is no money, and you can't use your MBR to give to someone else. So there's no stock. So there is no stock exchange, but the value is still there. So
Yeah.
like Apple, which is trading well above $1,000, I think, per share, they they're still creating value in Copiosis, and the people who are contributing to Apple's operation are all getting recognized through net benefit rewards for the contribution they make to Apple. But
Yeah.
is there a thing called Apple that has quote unquote value? Like like today, you can point to this legal thing called Apple Corporation. I think that might be what it's
Okay.
called,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The legal entity, and that legal entity has value. It's worth billions of dollars. In Copiosis, that legal entity doesn't exist. It's just a bunch of people, a lot of bunch of people doing things that they love to do to create wonderful technologies. And that's all it is. And everyone who is contributing to that is getting MBR as a result of it. So the Apple
Yeah.
brand, I would imagine, would still exist. And I guess you could say it has value if you were to, for example, sum up all of the MBR that people who are contributing to Apple are receiving. You could say that's the total value of Apple, even though Apple wouldn't exist as a legal entity in Copiosis.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if that's
What?
true,
Who cares?
well, this is where I'm going, is that
Yeah.
if you did that, you could have a place like a game where people want to bet on whether that number is going to go up or down. And
Oh, okay.
and they could be rewarded MBR because of the entertainment value of that game.
Oh,
But
yeah.
they wouldn't, like today's stock exchange, you play that game because you can make money. In
Yeah.
the kind of the version of the stock exchange I'm talking about, which isn't a stock exchange but a game, the only value of playing that game is for the entertainment.
Entertainment.
Yeah, the entertainment value of seeing that number go
Entertainment.
up or
Yeah.
down. I
Yeah.
guess.
I guess.
I know, right?
Yeah, I don't see that as being of a great value to
I
people in
don't
the
either.
future if copiosis. Okay, so now, uh, I've thought about how many jobs copiosis is going to eliminate. Granted, you don't have debt anymore, but I'm thinking about this tremendous amount of systems that banks have to move money around.
Yeah.
So, do you foresee, like, as we transition through, that the banks could, in fact, uh, be um a source for copiosis to, uh, like a workforce right there to help copiosis like transition from the capitalistic society to the copiosis society, that the we could utilize their tremendous systems that they have to convert to copiosis.
Yeah.
Because I think people say this is impossible, this can't happen. But then I look at the Soviet Union and what they've done. I mean, they capitalized their country. The way they did it was horrific, but and they're still not a democracy, but they did capitalize their system. So um, it can be done. It's being
Yeah.
done all the
Yeah, there is there are a lot of people that work in banks. And
time. Yeah,
as you know, because you were in you did mortgage work, a lot of
yeah,
different skills are in there. There's like
yeah.
statisticians and mathematicians and clerks and accountants.
Data entry people,
Yeah,
all of
data entry
that. I
people.
mean, it's
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
yeah, lots of skills.
yeah. So all of
Lots of
those skills have application in copiosis. I mean, there's going to be an enormous amount of data. We talked
Yeah,
about this several shows ago. There's an enormous
right.
amount of data that's going to be generated that needs to be analyzed, and of course, AI is going to do some of that in the future.
Sure.
But there's a lot of data moving around. There's a lot of data collection that has to occur. There's a lot of thinking about the system itself and how to improve it. So like data analysis is what I'm thinking about.
Right. Yeah.
And then some of those jobs people don't really like to do.
Enjoy or like
Yeah,
to do it,
yeah.
or
They do it.
but they might be more inspired by copiosis if they have the freedom to, like, do more in that field than what they're doing now.
That's
You
right.
know,
Right.
uh, they might be inspired to stay and see what they can make happen in that field. Or they
Yeah.
might just go do whatever they want to do,
Well, see,
like they're
that's
free to
the
do that,
thing.
right?
Yeah, that's the good thing about copiosis is that with your all your necessities provided, you're free to, like that woman that you read from, you're free to breathe for a little while and think. And some of those people in the baking industry might figure out some really cool ways that the industry itself could lend itself to copiosis.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, so, okay. So the other thing that bothers people
yeah,
is that every, okay, every single transaction is recorded. So let's say, okay,
Yeah.
so let's say like right now, if I want the, boy across the street to come over and mow my yard, I just give him a $20 bill when he's done.
Hmm.
But now if I want him to get any sort of monetary or not monetary, but like an NBR, because he's done a benefit for me, I have to report it. It has to be verified, and now you have this permanent record of just stupid little, kid mowing my lawn thing. Who cares, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's just, I mean, that is just probably the most simple thing
Yeah.
I can think of, right? The
Yeah.
most simple thing,
Yeah.
right? So, and then when I go to the grocery store, assuming there's grocery
Yes,
stores,
there are.
and everything that okay, so let's say I go and I buy my regular grocery list, the milk, the bread, the whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I go check that out, right? And none of them are luxury items.
Yeah.
So I'm not giving up any NBR for
No.
that,
No,
right?
you're not.
But the store is going to want a record that they
Yeah, they are.
pass items off to someone,
That's right.
so they'll have a means of making that record.
It's the
But
same.
that transaction, so do they need to, do I need to verify that I consumed those things from them? Or is it going to be just like, okay, well, we had this much inventory, and now this inventory has gone out the door. I mean, does every single stupid, I bought a can of chili. Yeah, 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 I did buy a can of chili. Like, is it going to be that broke down and that detailed in your thinking, or is it going to be more like, okay, we have in this grocery store, we have this much inventory, and today this much inventory went out, and this much more inventory came in from, and are they going to break it down like, Jill bought a can of tomatoes and Fred bought a, beer, and you know what I mean? Like, not bought, but
Yeah, I get it. I get
obtained.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting because I think it's going to be a hybrid, and it'll get more and more detailed as we move forward and technology supports it. But let's talk about the lawnmower thing, and it'll easily move into this larger one. Yeah.
Okay.
So, have you ever driven in an Uber?
No,
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
no.
Um, have you ever made a purchase on Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So imagine you're out in your yard, and up comes this
Mm-hmm.
young man with a robotic lawnmower,
Mm-hmm.
and he comes to you and says, "Ma'am, I'd like to cut your grass. Would you let me cut your grass?" And you say, "Well, as a matter of fact, my grass needs cutting. So yeah, you can cut my grass." And so he whips out his phone and he types into his app, because he already has it set up, his lawn mowing app, and he says the phone knows where he is because it's got GPS in it, and he's standing
Mm-hmm.
on your yard, so it knows what house he's at. It knows
Yeah.
the address, and that can be
Yeah.
gotten from the records that currently exist today. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
even listening, so it heard his voice and it heard your voice,
Yeah.
confirm, and so now all the details he needs to create a agreement is in his phone, in his app. So all he has to do now is push the button, confirm, and then you get a notification on your phone that says, "Hey Jill,
You confirm.
Jimmy just said that he's going to cut your grass. Will you confirm it, please?" And then when you
Yeah.
click yes, all
Yeah.
the record keeping's done. So
Yeah.
now he cuts his grass. Now he cuts his grass, or he cuts your grass, and when the grass is cut, he puts pushes another button on the app. Did you cut the grass? Yes, I cut the grass. He pushes the button.
Yeah.
You get a
Right.
notification on your phone that says, "Hey, your grass has been cut. Why don't you go out and take a look at it and rate Jimmy for how well he cut the grass?" So
Yeah.
you can go out and do that. Meanwhile, he walks away with his automatic lawnmower, happy because he's confirmed it. You come out and either you confirm that it's beautiful or you do whatever you do, make a note of it in your app, and then it's done. So that's not that hard to do. It's basically the same thing that you do when you order a product on Amazon, right? It's no more difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
now let's look at the grocery. And I'm gonna give a little bit of, well, it's too late now. I was gonna give a little bit of break because I know TC is gonna edit these down, and so I wanted to give him a break to
Right.
cut it, but that's okay. Um, so now with the grocery, it's even easier because right now grocery stores are um, monitoring.
Image.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know that. Yes, they're monitoring inventory. And we are already seeing copiosis emerge because I don't know about you, but at every grocery store, almost every grocery store that I shop at, usually, there is a place where you can check yourself out.
Right.
Right? You take the
Yeah.
tomato and you rub it against the scanner and it tells how much it costs and you put it over there and then later you bag it and pay for it and all that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 Hmm.
The same thing will happen in copiosis. So like so you know this part of it, but when we get to the house part, it might be this might be new information. So Johnny comes in and he buys all his groceries, or he gets all his groceries in his cart. He goes over to the checkout stand, and maybe at this point he has to take everything out, run it across the scanner, and put it over on the other side of the scanner. In the future, the near future, he might not have to do that. He might just have to. Um, so here are a couple of scenarios this could work. When Johnny's at the produce section and he picks up a butternut squash and puts the butternut squash in his cart, his phone might recognize where he is and recognize the difference between the weight of his um, cart before he put the butternut squash in there and the weight of his cart when he put the butternut squash in. So the phone and the cart will know whether or not he took the butternut squash, and that will send a signal to the grocery store to know that Johnny took a butternut squash. So then when he pushes his cart up to the checkout, and the current self checkouts do this already, it can tell when you put the product where you're supposed to put it after you've scanned it. If you don't, it says, please put your item in the bagging area, right? It says
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
already. Yeah. So it can happen that way, or Johnny can just roll through the checkout and the system, a sensor, will scan everything as he rolls out. And so he doesn't have to
Yeah.
do anything other than just roll out with his stuff.
Who knows
Maybe
where the advances will go in terms of that?
that's my
But
point. Yes.
but the
Well, so let
uh,
me get to the consumption part because that's the part that
okay.
sounds like it might be hard. So now Joe has a can of chili and a gallon of milk. He puts the gallon of milk in his refrigerator and he puts the chili in his pantry. The pantry and the refrigerator both have sensors in them that recognize what's coming in and out of those things. We already have
Mm,
a refrigerator that can do that. Samsung makes a refrigerator that will notify you when your milk is
right.
old
When you're low on milk or whatever.
or
Yeah.
you need to order eggs. And I think it'll even order that stuff for you. So we already have
Hmm.
that on the refrigerator end. Having that on the pantry end is just an extension of the technology.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So your question is it just going to be when he takes the produce out of or the goods out of the store? No, it's going to be when he consumes it because that's when the benefit occurs. So when the milk empties, then the store gets MBR for having provided Jim or whatever that guy's name was, the milk. Same with
Yeah.
the
Right.
chili.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I have a can of chili in my pantry that's been in there for 6 months. I haven't eaten it yet.
Okay. So you're saying that even when oh, all right. So let's go down another path. So I go to the store and I buy a head of lettuce, let's say, and I take it home and I throw it in my refrigerator
Mm-hmm.
and I don't use it and I end up throwing it in the garbage. Well, that's my bet. That's not on the farmer that grew it or the grocer that provided it to me. That's my bet, right?
Right. So
So
let's talk.
how,
Yeah, let's talk
why
about that.
wouldn't,
So
okay.
we don't need. So when you throw a head of lettuce in a copiosis environment into whatever you throw it into, it's not the garbage because everyone is maximizing net benefit value, right? So someone is going to figure out, someone already has figured out, but in copiosis even more so, what to do with rotten food.
No, no, it's not so much the
Oh no,
rotted food.
I'm
It's
getting
the payment of,
I'm getting to that.
okay,
I'm getting to that. Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay. So like if you throw out a head of lettuce, it becomes compost and goes back into the soil. So that's a value. That's a value to that head of lettuce that you threw out, which you could get MBR for. Now, the
Okay.
grocer and the farmer who provided you with the lettuce, it isn't. I'm gonna sum this up. The the number of people that throw away rotten lettuce is smaller than the number of people who actually eat the lettuce. So
Mm-hmm.
the value lost in you throwing away the lettuce, like the net benefit value that's lost as a result of that lettuce going to waste, is insignificant compared to the numbers of heads of lettuce that are producing net benefit, not just for people who eat those lettuce, but also for pigs that eat lettuce that people aren't willing to consume, or for
Yeah.
lettuce that goes from because it doesn't look good because it's not shaped right. It doesn't ever get to the grocery store, so it goes into the compost or something like that. So there's far more value being created by heads of lettuce that are consumed in some way than there are heads of lettuce that go in the dumpster. But even the ones that go in the dumpster are creating that benefit value because they become compost. So that we could we could carve out and say like, okay, for every batch of lettuce, we know that 5% of that's way too high, but we know that 5% of the lettuce isn't going to be consumed by a human being, but it's going to be used for other purposes. And so we're going to credit the farmer for 5% of the lettuce not going in a human body, but otherwise going into some other net beneficial value, and be done with it. It doesn't. This is the thing. We don't have to be perfect with regard to measuring every single transaction
Mm,
because people are still going to get enough MBR from all the other things they're doing. So like the farmer, well, the farmer's freaking rich if he's feeding people. There's no doubt about that. But in addition to feeding people, he's also um, taking care of his chickens in a certain way that's net beneficial. He's taking care of the land in a certain way that's net beneficial. He's raising his
right.
kid. He's
Right.
raising his kids. He's being a good husband. He's being a good
Yeah.
community member, and all of those
Right.
things he's doing is also generating NBR for him. So, is he going to miss a little bit of NBR because you didn't eat your lettuce?
I didn't eat
You didn't
my
eat your lettuce, Jill. You bad person.
veggies.
Yeah. And is the
Yeah,
grocery
yeah.
store.
It's just, I guess where I was getting to is that it's that, okay, so let me back up to the grocery store. Okay, I took
Yeah.
a can of chili and a head of lettuce, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, um, you know, it was, so when I remove those items from that location,
Yeah.
normally the do you foresee a time where that we already know what the net benefit is going to be for me, and you just, you know, the the people who provided the service at the store and the, you know, the food, you know, that I'm taking are just immediately given an NBR because we already know
Yes,
what the
Jill.
benefit of a can of chili is going to
Yes.
be and
Yes.
what the benefit of a head
Yes.
of lettuce is going to be.
Yes.
So it doesn't, I don't have to go back and say, damn, that was good chili.
Well,
I love that chip.
you might want to do
Oh,
that
I
if it gives you
do.
that reaction.
Right, right.
Yes.
But but most things that simple and and ordinary will are it is we've already know that
Yeah.
we already know the benefit
Yes.
of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It's quite clear,
Yeah.
or the detriment of things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's pretty clear. So
Well,
there's a lot of things that now, and oh, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, I think we've got this. I think I have understand it. I think most people would kind of understand. There's going to be some time sort of getting all that data into place so that
yeah.
it's just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And then some things will, of course, take more time,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like I invented a spaceship or something,
Yes.
that's going to take, right, more time, right?
That's right.
So, um, yeah.
Hey,
So the
can you hold on to your question? I need to take a break. We're
yeah,
6 minutes over.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
this is Copios. This is live stream called Devil's Advocate. You guys, thank you so much for watching. You're probably watching the recorded version because there's not many people watching live stream right now. If you are new to Copiosis and you want to find out more about what we're doing, you can go to this website, copiosis.com. We've got a bunch of information there that talks about what we're about and what our innovation is about. And then that second website, the URL there takes you to our Patreon site where you can find out how we use the money that people are giving us to implement our transition. And if you want, you can become a Patreon for as little as $1 a month. So feel free to go there. And then finally, if you haven't already, and you're new to the oops, wrong one. If you haven't already and you're new to our YouTube channel, please feel free to subscribe and click that bell so that you will be notified of future live streams that we will be having on our YouTube channel. This is Devil's Advocate, the YouTube channel show where we ask the difficult questions. And I'm Perry Gruber, and with me is Jill Dell, my co-host, and we're talking about economics today. And it's been a great conversation so far.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like, and then breaking it down right to the little nitty gritty, right?
Yeah.
So the one of the you know okay, so one of the aspects of copious, of course, is eliminating your debt, providing housing, providing, education, da 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 da. Da. But and food, okay, but I think it would. Wouldn't you say that you're not going to be able to live in your house unless you have something to sit on and something to eat off of and silverware and, like glassware and,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all the household
Yeah.
items. So, or would you say that it would be expanded from just food to include when you say, your food and clothing are provided, wouldn't you say that that would be more expansive?
Well, I could see.
It would have to be.
Well, I don't know.
I,
So, like, different people have different tastes with regard to things like the things you just mentioned, like sofas and tables and utensils. And so I would imagine those things might be luxury items that people would give up MBR for because they want that particular thing that really lights their fire when they look at it. But
right,
there might also be, so think about how net benefit works. You the more value you create for someone, the more MBR you
mm,
get. So
right.
if I so which home builder do you think is going to get more MBR? This home builder who builds a house. It's a beautiful house. It's got all the utilities, of course, because every house is going to have utilities, and it has all the rooms that that the builder thinks is going to be necessary. But that's all he does. It's just that house. And then there's this other house built by this other builder. It has the same thing that this house has, all the same things, except this builder said, well, since this is going to be a necessity house and I want to create the most net benefit value, thereby getting the
Right.
most MBR, I'm going to put furniture in it. So he
Oh,
goes to a furniture company, and I'm going to go to the nines. I'm just going to outfit the entire house. So he goes to to all the providers of those things and says, look, if you give me these things and I put them in my house and people move into my house, you're going to get MBR because your things are being used by these people. So they're going to say
Right.
yes, right? And so
Right.
which house is generating more net benefit value,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I
But at
can
the same time, if you, I mean, I would think that there would need to be some sort of basics in terms of household items that would be at no cost.
well if the builder decides to put the stuff in there, it is no cost.
I know, but I'm talking about just, like, I'm just
Oh,
finished my education and now
gotcha.
I'm going to, move into this place, and the people moved out and they took everything with
Yeah,
them,
yeah.
and now I need to set up a household. Or maybe I broke a set of dishes and I need or maybe there was a big windstorm and it blew,
So
a tree down, smash my living room or something. You know what I mean? Like, and of course, if you want something that's all designer or whatever, or, extraordinarily crafted or something, or it's like a piece of art or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
those could be considered a luxury item.
Well, it's interesting because I think you've identified something that's really exciting about the nature of copiosis. So like right now, I believe Target has a line of goods that they call everyday living, I think it's Target.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's all that basic stuff. And so
Right. Yeah.
I could see as a way of creating large and continuous net benefit income, an
Hmm.
organization like Target or even just a small one-man shop
Yeah.
creating
Yeah.
basic items that people could get as necessities. For sure I could
Yeah.
see that happening.
Exactly.
For
Yeah.
sure. And this is the thing, Jill, is that anybody can do whatever they want in copiosis. If you
Yeah.
want to make silverware and offer it as necessity silverware, you can, because no one, this is the thing that some people misunderstand about copiosis. No one is telling other people whether their product is a necessity or luxury. It's up
Right.
to the person who makes it. So if I make forks, I might make a set of forks that are really beautiful and took a lot of time to make and designate those as luxury because I want people to really appreciate those. But then
They're a piece of art,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. But then I might
Yeah.
also make basic forks that are just stamped out of a machine that I want to
Yeah.
provide as necessities,
Yeah.
and I get to
Yeah.
decide. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So you're right. Yeah. I want to go back to something you said though about instant MBR reward and instant rewards,
Okay.
because there are elements of that happen exactly the way you say, and not just with regard to like consuming food. So think about research. So when someone studies like bat habitats or
Mhm.
whale poop or something like that, that kind of research, there are people who do that. That kind of
Yeah,
research
sure there are. Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
research, something is going to be discovered about that out of that research. But the research itself, like the doing of the
That's
research,
bad.
is producing value too. Yes. And so
Right.
we know that research for research's sake produces value. So a
Yes.
researcher doesn't have to wait until he or she comes up with this eureka discovery to get MBR, because just by doing the research, they're creating value by expanding human knowledge. So so there's a stream of MBR already coming into that researcher's MBR account, and if they discover some breakthrough, then a huge amount of MBR follows that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so just as you said, when as we get better at knowing human and measuring human value, the gap between when someone does something and receives their MBR is going to get narrower and narrower, to the
Yeah.
point,
Right.
and AI is going to help a lot with that. So yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get to the point where people are getting MBR all the time, almost instantly, for the things they're doing.
Right. So going back to the economics of it, we don't have much time left. Going
Yeah,
back to the economics of
that's
it,
okay.
where does inflation come into all of this? There's no inflation.
There's no inflation. We talked about this in our social group on Facebook. There's
Yeah.
no, so think about where inflation comes from. Inflation happens because people think that inflation happens because um, banks print too much money and put the money in in the economy. And it looks
Yeah,
like
right.
that's why it happens. But the reason why
Yeah.
inflation happens is not because of that. The reason why inflation happens is because the people who sell things to make money want more of that money that's coming into the system, so they raise their prices to get more of that money.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
inflation
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
So
Right.
in copiosis, there's no need to inflate prices because to get more money, you don't to get more MBR, you don't get it from prices. You get it from the value. So if there's in
Right.
here's this is cool. This is a great way to end. If the inflation does occur in copiosis, here's what it looks like. Products getting better and better. The better you inflate the value, the more NBR you get. So yeah, there's inflation. It's inflated benefit to humanity instead of inflated
Inflated
prices.
benefit.
Yes.
Why do we want inflation?
Yes, we want. That's the
Doesn't mean
answer.
anything's going to cost you anything more. It
Yes.
just means it's going to be a better product,
That's exactly
right?
right. That's
Right.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
And the thing is when I die, my NBR is going to go away. So who cares?
That's right. You certainly
You
don't
know,
care.
I don't care, right? Like,
and
doesn't
and
matter.
and that ties the whole conversation around in a nice bow because we started talking about the nature of MBR to money. And this is
Yeah.
one of the interesting things about MBR. It's like since you can't give your MBR to anyone else and they don't need it because they're creating
You
tons
don't
of
need
net
it,
benefit value. Yeah, when you die, your MBR just goes back where it came from, which is nowhere. So
which is
yeah.
nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So good, good, pretty good.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
In our roundabout, meandering paths, we come to excellent conclusions.
That's we sure do. We just like we
Understanding, hopefully. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
So
like this
yeah,
show did.
it's
Yeah,
yeah,
it's so
exactly.
so
Just like
cool.
we're thinking we want to do.
Exactly, exactly. It's so wonderful how this all just how copiosis is so elegant in its design, and everything just flows naturally from it. It's just so beautiful.
It does.
It goes right
It
back.
is.
It goes right back to what you read at the beginning of the show, where it leaves humanity free to relax and to be and to enjoy life instead of spending most of life struggling.
Like
Yeah,
little rats in a cage
rats in a
running the
cage.
mill,
Yeah,
and just taking that kind of pressure off of people, you know, is like, oh yeah, this is something we'll have to talk about in one of our next sessions, maybe, or upcoming
write it down.
sessions.
Write it down.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, but yeah, it's just that we've talked about finding this sort of peaceful stillness
Yeah,
and how much we're scurrying so overloaded with all of it. It's just to just breathe once in a while, you know?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just to breathe
yeah,
is sometimes very, very difficult for people.
yeah,
Feel like they can even take a breath,
yeah.
you know?
It's the
I don't know.
basics.
I
It's the
just, I
basics of
just
what we're doing.
see it as so much more um, community, and people wanting to be helpful, and not just because they're getting NBR for it, but
Right,
just because they have the time to be
right,
that way,
right,
and it's what they're passionate about,
right.
and you know, it's all about being free to make things better,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well,
All
we've had another good show. This was a good one. I bet TC's excited about chopping this one up into little segments. So, audience, thank you so much for watching today. This has been
Thank
Devil's
you.
Advocate with Jill Dell and me, Perry Gruber, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. And just to let folks know, next week we're moving the show from Tuesdays at 11 to Monday at 1 o'clock so that we can have our political strategist, Christopher Hatton with us. He's going to answer Jill's tough questions about politics and government. So we'll be talking
Yes.
politics and government next week.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Kids. It's a scary one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.